Welcome to the deep dive. We take the sources, those really influential ideas in psychology, philosophy, and, well, we give you the knowledge shortcut.
Yeah, we try to distill it down.
Exactly. And today, we're tackling something huge, I think, really critical for anyone trying to navigate, modern life.
Definitely.
We're diving deep into the psychological architecture you need to build confidence. Not just any confidence, but confidence that's so strong, so inherent that nothing external can really shake it. Unbreakable confidence.
Right. And if we're going to talk about true unbreakable confidence, the kind you mean, we absolutely have to talk about its foundation.
Which is?
Healthy self-esteem. Our main source today, it's the seminal work in this field. It actually asserts that self-esteem isn't just, one factor among many.
Okay.
It is, and this is a direct quote, the single most important psychological subject in the world.
Wow. Okay, that sounds like a massive claim, maybe even hyperbole.
It does at first glance, yeah. But honestly, when you start looking at the implications, how it affects relationships, careers, just personal decisions,
yeah,
you pretty quickly see why that claim might actually be warranted. It touches everything.
So this framework, it comes mainly from Dr. Nathaniel Branden's work, right?
Yeah.
The Six Pillars of Self-Esteem.
That's the core of it, yes. And what's crucial here is that this isn't about vague platitudes. It's not the sort of toxic optimism you get from a feel-good seminar.
Right, no, just believe in yourself fluff.
Exactly. No, this is presented as a rigorous, practical architecture. It lays out a set of specific daily practices, both internal and external things you do.
Practices you actually have to practice.
Precisely. Things required to attain and, importantly, sustain high self-esteem. So our mission here is to move past that simple believe-in-yourself idea and really get into the technical manual, the actionable, repeatable steps that can fundamentally change how you relate to reality and how you relate to yourself.
Okay, let's unpack this then, starting with the definition. What is this unbreakable confidence, this healthy self-esteem?
It's built on two core components, and they're interlocked. They have to work together. This is vital.
Both have to be present.
Both have to be present. You cannot have high self-esteem, according to this framework, if one of these pillars is missing or weak.
Right. What's the first one?
The first component is self-efficacy.
Self-efficacy. Okay.
This is basically confidence in the actual functioning of your own mind. It's that deeply held conviction in your ability to think, to learn, to understand the world around you.
So like cognitive competence.
Exactly. Your ability to make good choices, solve problems, make decisions. You could call it internal self-trust. Self-reliance fits too, yeah. It's that feeling deep down that no matter what challenge life throws at you, you've got the internal cognitive tools to process it, to figure it out, to adapt.
Okay, makes sense. Trusting your own ability to cope mentally. And the second component?
The second is self-respect.
Self-respect.
This is about your sense of personal worthiness, that deep feeling that you are deserving of happiness, of success, achievement, love.
So less about can I cope, more about do I deserve good things?
Perfectly put. It's your feeling of personal dignity. So you see the link, right? If you lack the belief that you're worthy of a good life, that's low self-respect. Or if you lack the belief that you can actually cope with the demands of that good life, that's low self-efficacy.
And your confidence is shaky, built on sand, like you said.
Exactly. It's built on sand. And they really reinforce each other. Think about it. If you feel you deserve happiness, that's self-respect. You're naturally more motivated to engage your mind, to achieve it, right? That uses your self-efficacy.
And if you try something, maybe you fail, but you learn from it.
Right. That reinforces your self-efficacy, your trust in your ability to learn. Yeah. And because you acted responsibly, tried your best, your dignity, your self-respect, it remains intact. You see?
Yeah, I see how they weave together. Okay, so that's the what. Now, why is this so profoundly important? You mentioned survival earlier.
Yes, the survival element. This is where it gets really fundamental. The source argues self-esteem isn't just like a personality trait you might have or not have.
It's not optional.
It's presented as a fundamental human need with actual survival value.
Survival value. How so?
Well, its absence impairs functioning in almost every single area of life. And this happens whether we consciously understand the dynamics or not.
Right.
If you're constantly operating from a place of feeling inadequate, maybe always second-guessing your own judgment.
Yeah.
Your ability to adapt, to think clearly and critically, to even pursue your own well-being, it's just dramatically compromised.
So it hinders your ability to navigate life effectively.
Exactly. It's presented as literally an imperative for psychological survival in the world we live in.
And what's really fascinating is how this psychological need has kind of rapidly become an explicit economic necessity, too, especially in the modern workplace.
Oh, absolutely. The whole structure of work has fundamentally shifted, hasn't it? Over the last, say, 50 years, we've moved away from that old model.
The top-down command and control thing.
Yeah, this sort of military structure where management did all the thinking and workers just executed orders. We've moved towards much flatter organizations, more team-based work.
Which demands something totally different from the average employee.
Right.
Mentally.
Radically different. The source uses this, okay, it's a slightly older example now, but it's striking, from Motorola, describing an entry-level production operator job.
Okay.
Listen to what was required. The operator needs to analyze computer reports and identify problems through experiments and statistical process control.
For an entry-level operator.
Yeah, and communicate manufacturing performance metrics to management and understand the company's competitive position.
Wow. That sounds less like operating a machine and more like middle management.
It's basically a self-management and analytical job disguised as production labor. Now, fast forward that requirement to today's world. Think about remote work, agile teams, project management.
Everyone's expected to manage themselves.
Every knowledge worker today is expected to show incredible levels of personal responsibility, self-management, self-direction, initiative, critical analysis at every level.
And if you lack that self-efficacy we talked about, that self-trust.
You can't take initiative. You just freeze when faced with ambiguity or a lack of clear orders.
Which is death in today's economy.
Right. In an economy where innovation and speed are everything, low self-esteem in your workforce isn't just a morale issue. It's a direct bottleneck to competitiveness. It really isn't just about feeling good. It's about having the cognitive courage, the mental resilience required to actually do a modern job.
Okay, that cognitive courage, or the lack of it, that leads us straight into something really destructive that holds so many people back. The idea of the self-saboteur.
Ah, yes. The self-fulfilling prophecy aspect, it's powerful. Our level of self-esteem, high or low, tends to generate these prophecies. We unconsciously act in ways that make reality conform to the deepest, most implicit knowledge we hold about ourselves.
So my inner belief about myself shapes my actions, which then shapes my reality to match the belief.
Precisely. This self-concept is incredibly stubborn. If deep down your self-concept is whispering, I am not lovable, or maybe I'm just not capable of real success, you will, without realizing it, act in ways to confirm that truth, regardless of the actual opportunities life might be throwing at you.
Especially in relationships, I imagine.
Oh, relationships are a prime example. The source suggests the greatest barrier to sustained happiness in romance is often that implicit fear, I don't deserve love, or my destiny is just to be hurt or abandoned.
You see that play out all the time, don't you? Someone who keeps picking partners who are, well, clearly unavailable or likely to reject them.
Exactly, and why? Consciously, they might say they're just unlucky in love, but unconsciously, they might be confirming that internal narrative. See, I was right all along. I am unlovable.
Or the opposite, maybe. They find someone truly loving and devoted.
And then they sabotage it by demanding constant, impossible levels of reassurance, or maybe picking fights over nothing.
Until the partner just gets exhausted and leaves.
Right. Confirming the original fear again, the source gives this absolutely devastating little story, a vignette.
Oh, yeah.
About a man who finally settles down, marries a woman who truly loves him, adores him, and when her devotion becomes undeniable, absolutely clear, he doesn't feel relief. He feels confusion, anxiety.
Why? Because it doesn't fit his script.
It totally contradicts his self-concept. He starts wondering if maybe he set his standards too low. Like, how could someone so wonderful, so devoted, actually choose him?
Oh, that's agonizing. So what does he do?
He leaves her. He leaves his loving wife because her devotion creates this unbearable cognitive dissonance. It fundamentally challenges his core belief that he's not lovable.
So the pain of ending the relationship is actually less for him than the anxiety of being wrong about his own unworthiness.
That seems to be the tragic logic. His
Yeah.
inner world tells him he has to destroy the relationship to reduce that internal conflict. It's just devastating.
And it highlights that terrible choice people sometimes make unconsciously.
Exactly. The choice between, on the one hand, the temporary devastation of being proven right about their unworthiness, or, on the other hand, tolerating the anxiety that comes with an opportunity to actually be happy.
And they choose the familiar pain.
Often, yes. They choose the familiarity of being right because, however painful, it feels like stable ground compared to the anxiety of challenging that core belief.
Which leads right into this idea the sources talk about called happiness anxiety.
Yes, the paradox that actual success or joy or receiving deep love can trigger these negative internal voices.
What kind of voices?
Oh, things like, you don't deserve this, or this is too good to be true, it'll never last, or a really common one, apparently, I'm
Yeah.
betraying my parents, or I'm somehow killing them by being happier than they were.
Wow, that digs deep into family loyalty, doesn't it?
It really does. So the practice required here, and it takes real courage, is the ability to tolerate happiness, to actually sit with it without sabotaging it until that fear starts to dissipate.
How do you do that?
You have to bring consciousness to those destructive internal voices. Notice them when they pop up. Patiently argue back, refute their nonsense, and consciously distinguish them from the voice of your rational adult self.
Okay, so acknowledging the voice, but not letting it drive the bus.
Exactly. And this whole self-sabotage thing isn't just in romance, it's rampant in professional life too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think about that example of the newly promoted man. He gets the job, but he's just consumed by imposter panic.
Feels like a fraud.
Totally. Feels like he doesn't belong. So what does he do? He starts unconsciously setting himself up to fail. Shows up unprepared for meetings, maybe says inappropriate things, ignores feedback.
Until he gets fired, predictably.
Yeah. And in a weird way, he's back in control, isn't he?
It's a perverse kind of control. The anxiety of feeling like a fraud who's about to be found out is often unbearable. So by orchestrating his own failure, he kind of preempts the exposure. He controls the timing of the crash, which gives him this weird, destructive sense of efficacy.
That makes sense in a dark way. Or what about the manager, the one who gets consumed by envy?
Right. The manager who buries a subordinate's really brilliant idea, maybe makes excuses like, oh, we don't have the bandwidth right now.
But the real reason?
The real reason is that the subordinate's brilliance threatens her. It exposes her own perceived intellectual emptiness or inadequacy. It's surprising, but the source suggests that generosity towards the achievements of others is actually a really clear sign of healthy self-esteem.
Because you're not threatened by other people's light.
Exactly. And one more example that probably resonates with a lot of people in corporate settings.
Okay.
The brilliant woman, maybe in the marketing department, she has a great idea, a genuinely insightful strategy. But in the meeting, she doesn't speak up.
Why not?
That inner voice kicks in. Don't make yourself conspicuous. Who are you to have a good idea? They'll think you're pushy. She dreads being visible. Maybe she learned early on that intellectual self-assertion leads to disapproval or social rejection.
So she stays quiet.
She stays quiet and then suffers later, feeling resentful or frustrated because nobody sees me, nobody recognizes my talent. But the tragedy is she made herself invisible first.
Wow. That's the core tragedy we're trying to fix here, isn't it? We have to stop inflicting these wounds on ourselves.
That's the goal. That's what these pillars are designed to address.
Okay, so to break these patterns, to really build that unbreakable confidence, we need to adopt these 6 pillars as actual daily practices.
Yeah.
Let's start with the internal work: consciousness, acceptance, and responsibility. Pillar 1,
Pillar 1 is the practice of living consciously.
living consciously. What does that mean in practice?
It means having an active intention, a commitment to be aware of everything that bears on our actions, our values, our purposes, our goals, basically aware of the relevant reality inside and out to the best of our ability.
And critically.
And then acting in accordance with that knowledge. Awareness isn't enough if it doesn't lead to action.
So it's not passive observation. It's an active choice.
Very much so. The source emphasizes this idea that nature or evolution gave us this unique capacity for self-awareness, but also the responsibility, the option of turning that searchlight of consciousness brighter or dimmer.
It's the choice to think or not to think, to engage with reality or evade it.
Exactly. And living consciously involves some specific skills that people often overlook, like, for instance, rigorously distinguishing between facts, interpretations, and emotions.
Okay, break that down.
Yeah.
Fact, interpretation, emotion.
All right. A fact might be, my boss sent me an email at 10 p.m. last night. That's verifiable.
Okay.
An interpretation might be, my boss hates me and thinks I'm incompetent. That's why he emailed late. That's a story I'm telling myself about the fact.
That could be true. Could be totally false.
And an emotion might be anxiety or fear resulting from that interpretation. Now, if you confuse your interpretation with a fact,
You react as if your boss definitely hates you.
precisely, your grounding in reality gets shaky, and that immediately undermines your self-efficacy, your ability to respond appropriately.
Okay, but I have to voice what some listeners might be thinking. This sounds exhausting. Being fully conscious all the time. We're busy, stressed, tired. Is that realistic?
That's a really important question.
Hmm.
And the framework absolutely acknowledges the difficulty. It's not about achieving some kind of flawless 24/7 enlightenment. That's not the point.
So it's about the effort.
It's about the intention, the commitment to try to be conscious. When you notice yourself slipping into denial or maybe evading a difficult truth, the conscious act is simply recognizing that slip and gently correcting course. That is the practice.
So it's like noticing you're zoning out and bringing your attention back.
Exactly. It requires constantly noticing and confronting that impulse we all have to avoid or deny painful realities, instead of seeing fear or pain as a signal to shut down or run away.
You see it as a signal to open your eyes wider.
Yes, to look more closely. For example, recognizing that a relationship is consistently draining your energy, or maybe that a career path feels deeply wrong for you, but then clinging to silence or inaction because facing it is uncomfortable.
That's a betrayal of consciousness.
That's what the source calls it, because your awareness isn't being translated into appropriate action. You know something, but you're not acting on it.
Okay. So how do we get better at this? Is there a practical tool?
There is. And it's brilliant because it's so simple and immediate. It's using sentence completion.
Sentence completion. How does that work?
You take a specific sentence stem and you write down maybe 6 to 10 different endings for it. Quickly, without censoring or editing yourself, just let it flow.
Okay, give me an example to stem.
All right, for building consciousness, you could try starting your day with this stem. If I bring 5% more awareness to my life today, and just write whatever comes to mind.
If I bring 5% more awareness, okay, I like that. Just 5% feels manageable.
Exactly. It lowers the bar, makes it less intimidating. And then maybe at the end of the day, you reflect using this stem. When I reflect on what happens when I bring 5% more awareness to my activities.
So you're creating a feedback loop.
Precisely. This simple exercise can generate surprising shifts in awareness and even practical solutions, largely from your own subconscious, without needing tons of external advice. It just forces that searchlight of your mind outward and inward.
Cool. Okay, let's move to pillar 2, the practice of self-acceptance.
Right. Self-acceptance. This is defined basically as respect for reality applied to yourself.
Respect for reality applied to me.
It's the willingness to say of any thought you have, any emotion you feel, or any behavior you engage in, this is an expression of me right now, or this happened.
But crucially,
You don't have to like it. You don't have to approve of it or endorse it. You just accept the reality that it is or it was.
okay, I can see how that connects to consciousness, seeing what's real. But here's the tricky part, the paradox.
Yes, the core paradox of change, which often trips people up.
Right. How can accepting something negative lead to change? If I accept, okay, I'm feeling really lazy and unmotivated today, doesn't that just give me permission to stay that way? How does acceptance drive improvement?
Because you cannot effectively change what you refuse to acknowledge exists. Think about it. You can't learn from a mistake if you refuse to accept that you made it.
Yeah.
If you refuse to accept that maybe you sometimes act unconsciously, how are you ever going to learn to act more consciously? Acceptance is reality-based. Denying the reality of an unwanted emotion like laziness or fear doesn't make it go away.
It just pushes it underground.
Exactly. It pushes it deeper underground where it continues to influence your behavior unconsciously, often in more destructive ways. Acceptance brings it into the light where you can actually deal with it.
So it's more than just a mental nod, like, okay, I feel lazy. It's deeper.
It's deeper. It's about contemplating the reality of that unwanted emotion, maybe even breathing into it, allowing it to be fully felt without judgment. The source describes a client example.
Yeah.
This person, when asked how they were feeling, just gave this really tense, clipped one-word answer, rotten. But his whole body language, his tone, it was all fighting against the feeling. He named it, but he wasn't accepting it. So the therapist helped him to fully accept it, to say maybe, yes, right now I am feeling miserable, really, truly miserable.
And what happened?
The source says the physiological tension just flowed out of him. By accepting the feeling, he gained a measure of control over it. It shifted from being something that was just happening to him to something he could now observe and process.
Okay. But what if accepting it feels genuinely impossible?
Yeah.
Like, what if the feeling is overwhelming shame or anxiety so strong that just thinking about accepting it makes you want to run?
That's a great question, and there's a strategy for that, too. It's kind of the advanced level.
Okay.
You accept the resistance to acceptance.
Accept the resistance.
Yeah. So if you're struggling with intense shame and you just can't bring yourself to accept the shame itself, you shift your focus. You accept the fact that right now I am feeling shame and I am strongly resisting accepting this feeling.
So you accept the state you're actually in, which includes the resistance.
Precisely. You stay with that resistance at a conscious level without judging the resistance itself. And often, because you've stopped fighting that internal war against the resistance, it starts to soften or dissolve on its own. You move forward from exactly where you are.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, pillar 3, the practice of self-responsibility.
Self-responsibility. This is the deep acknowledgement that you are the primary causal agent in your own life and behavior, owning your choices, your actions, and the outcomes they produce.
Taking ownership.
Yes. And this practice, the source argues, requires a really profound, often difficult shift in worldview. It's the realization of the gut-level understanding that, ultimately, no one is coming.
Oof. No one is coming. That hits hard.
It does. It's meant to.
Because we all carry that fantasy, don't we?
No.
Of the rescuer, the perfect partner who will fix everything, the lottery win, the benevolent boss who will see our potential and save us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while that fantasy might offer some temporary comfort, it ultimately renders us passive, powerless, just waiting, watching life maybe drain away while we hope for external salvation.
So accepting no one is coming is the moment you take back the reins.
It's the moment you reclaim your agency. And the implications for action are immediate and huge. You have to take responsibility for achieving your desires. No one owes you the fulfillment of your wishes.
You're responsible for your own happiness.
That's a big one. It's presented almost as a duty you owe to yourself. You're also responsible for how you prioritize your time. This forces you to confront those internal contradictions.
Like what?
Like maybe you say you love your family and value connection above all else, but if you consistently prioritize friends or hobbies or work way ahead of any meaningful family engagement,
You have to take responsibility for that gap between your stated values and your actual behavior.
right? And crucially, you are responsible for raising your own self-esteem. It's not a gift others can bestow upon you. It's generated from within through consistently practicing these pillars.
So avoiding responsibility hurts your self-esteem.
Every evasion of responsibility, the source says, inflicts these slow, steady wounds on self-esteem. Remember that example of the partner who delayed ending a destructive relationship for years?
Yeah, because they didn't want to be the bad guy.
Exactly. By avoiding the discomfort of taking responsibility for the necessary, albeit painful, termination, they actually inflicted deeper cruelty and diminished the dignity of both themselves and their partner.
They prioritize being seen as nice over being responsible.
And destroyed their own self-respect in the process. That's the cost of evading responsibility. Accepting it, however hard, builds it.
Okay, so we've got the internal foundations. Consciousness, acceptance, responsibility. Now we need to take that out into the world, right? The action pillar.
Exactly. Time to put it into practice externally. Pillar 4 is the practice of self-assertiveness.
Self-assertiveness. Standing up for yourself.
Essentially, yes. It means honoring your own wants, your needs, your values, and seeking appropriate ways to express them in the world. It's the willingness to stand up for yourself, to treat yourself with respect in all your human encounters.
And it's also the refusal to.
What? Fake it.
Yeah, the refusal to fake who you are just to be liked or to gain approval. It's about authenticity and interaction. Refusing to wear a mask that violates your core self.
That sounds straightforward, but I bet it's incredibly hard for people whose upbringing taught them the opposite. Like, if asserting yourself meant punishment or withdrawal of love.
It becomes deeply challenging, yes.
Yeah.
It can manifest in really subtle ways. The source describes this powerful exercise where people were simply asked to stand up and say the words, I have a right to exist.
Just that sentence. I have a right to exist.
Just that. And the reactions were telling. One person sounded really belligerent, almost aggressive, like they were expecting an attack just for stating it.
Wow.
Another person sounded almost pleading, like they were apologizing for taking up space, begging forgiveness for existing.
So their difficulty wasn't in the words, but in the feeling behind them. The internalized expectation of being attacked or dismissed. Precisely. They couldn't just assert their basic right to exist with simple confidence and serenity. They hadn't internalized that refusal to fake themselves, that quiet self-possession.
And practicing this often takes real courage, doesn't it? Especially when your wants clash with what others expect of you.
Immense courage sometimes. Think about that vignette of the 48-year-old man. He had this lifelong dream of quitting his high-stress, high-income job. He wanted something simpler, less demanding, more time, more peace.
Okay.
He finally works up the courage to tell his family, and their immediate reaction, all focused on how their standard of living would drop, how they would be affected.
And what did he do?
He folded. He gave up his dream, buried that deep yearning for peace, telling himself, well, at least I'm not being selfish.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. He sacrificed his own need for their approval or to avoid conflict.
He sacrificed his deepest psychological need, his inner peace, his authentic desire to maintain that external identity of the good provider, and to avoid being labeled selfish. That's a profound self-betrayal driven by fear.
And self-assertiveness isn't just about words, right? It's also about actions.
Absolutely. Healthy self-esteem, through assertiveness, demands that we actively assert our existence in the world. That means confronting challenges, striving for mastery in things that matter to us, acquiring new skills, pushing the boundaries of our mind.
Leaping into the arena, as the source says.
Exactly. Leaping into the arena, even something like persevering when you hit a wall, trying to learn a new skill, that's an act of self-assertiveness. You're asserting your ability and right to grow.
Okay. Pillar 5. The practice of living purposefully.
Living purposefully. This means consciously using our powers, our abilities, our time for the attainment of goals that we have deliberately selected and defined.
So not just drifting along.
Definitely not drifting. The source puts it quite starkly. Without purpose, we live at the mercy of chance. We just bounce along like a cork on water, reactive instead of proactive.
And vague wishes don't count.
No. Purposes that remain just vague desires or aren't connected to a concrete plan of action, they just exist as frustrated yearnings. Daydreams, the source notes, do not produce the experience of efficacy. You have to do something.
Which links back to consciousness again, doesn't it?
Directly. Living purposefully requires constant conscious engagement, asking yourself, what am I actually trying to achieve here? What are the steps to get there? How do I structure my days, my weeks to make progress?
And checking in, seeing if it's working.
Right. Do I need to rethink my goals or maybe adjust my strategy based on the feedback reality is giving me? It's this continuous dynamic loop. Set intention, act, assess results, adjust.
And to do that effectively, you need discipline.
Absolutely. Cultivating self-discipline is essential. That's defined as the ability to organize your behavior over time in service of specific tasks or goals.
Which often means saying no to immediate pleasure.
Yes, it requires the ability to defer immediate gratification, that impulse to scroll social media, the desire for easy comfort in favor of a more remote, long-range goal. That capacity to delay gratification is a key marker of self-efficacy and purposefulness.
Okay, but here's a really important clarification, linking back to our earlier discussion about self-sabotage and worth.
Yes.
We have to be careful not to make the mistake of identifying our self-worth only with external achievements.
Right.
Like my job title, my income, my status as the provider.
That is a critical distinction and a major vulnerability for many people. If your entire sense of self-esteem is tied up in being, say, the CEO or the successful lawyer or the one who pays all the bills, and then external forces like an economic downturn cause you to lose that job or status, factors totally outside your control.
Your whole sense of self can collapse.
You can be flung into acute demoralization, depression even, because the very pillar that seemed to hold up your worth has been kicked out from under you. True, resilient self-esteem has to be anchored internally in these practices: consciousness, acceptance, responsibility, assertiveness, purposefulness, integrity, because those remain available to you regardless of your job title or bank balance.
Right. Your worth comes from how you live, not just what you achieve externally. Which brings us perfectly to the final pillar. Pillar 6. The practice of personal integrity.
Personal integrity, this is essentially the integration of who we claim to be and who we actually are. It's about congruence between our ideals, our standards, our professed values, and our actual behavior.
Walking the talk.
Walking the talk, practicing what you preach, making sure your internal map matches the external territory you navigate.
And when there's a mismatch, when we act against our own standards.
That's where the self-betrayal mechanism kicks in, and it's intensely personal. When our behavior conflicts with our own declared standards, we lose face in our own eyes. We damage our self-respect in a way that no amount of external criticism or disapproval ever could.
It's an internal wound.
It is.
Yeah.
The source uses strong language here. Hypocrisy is mind rejecting itself. It undermines and contaminates our sense of self right at the core.
And this doesn't have to be huge, dramatic betrayals, does it? It can be small things that erode our dignity over time.
Absolutely. Think about that example of Philip, the guy who considers himself a loyal confidant to his famous actor friend.
Okay.
But he continually uses the private, intimate details his friend shares with him to subtly raise his own status among his other acquaintances. You won't believe what my friend the actor told me.
He claims loyalty, but his actions are driven by a need for status.
Right. And each time he does it, even if no one else knows, he knows he's violating his own standard of loyalty. And that craving for status chips away at his self-esteem in his own eyes.
Or the other example, Sally in the book club.
Yes, Sally, who gradually distances herself from and eventually cuts off a longtime decent friend. Why? Because maintaining status with the powerful, maybe intimidating chairwoman of the book club feels more immediately rewarding.
She prioritizes social climbing over loyalty.
She does. She's aware of the short-term social payoff feeling in with the chairwoman, but she might be less aware or choosing to ignore the long-term cost, that silent, heavy erosion of her own self-respect, her integrity.
So when integrity fails like that, guilt is often the result.
Natural consequence. Guilt in this context is defined as moral self-reproach that arises from a choice we made, when that guilt is a direct result of a failure of integrity.
You can't just think your way out of it.
No. According to this framework, only a subsequent act of integrity can truly redress the breach. You have to act your way out of it. Maybe that means apologizing, making amends, or simply choosing differently the next time. Words alone aren't enough to restore that internal congruence.
But we also need to be careful about irrational guilt.
Right. Very important distinction. We need to separate appropriate regret or remorse for choices we made that violated our values from irrational guilt. The source talks about people who blame themselves for things they couldn't possibly control, like senseless accidents.
Like, if only I hadn't let them go out that night after a loved one is hurt by a drunk driver.
Exactly. That self-blame, if only I had, seems irrational on the surface, but psychologically, it can serve a hidden purpose. It gives the survivor the illusion of efficacy, the illusion that they could have controlled the uncontrollable.
They prefer the pain of guilt to the terrifying feeling of utter powerlessness.
That's the idea. They prefer feeling at fault to feeling completely helpless in a chaotic universe. So distinguishing appropriate guilt from this kind of defensive, irrational guilt is crucial for self-acceptance.
So practicing integrity. It sounds like it could be tough. It requires choosing honesty, choosing your own judgment, even when it might lead to conflict or risk disapproval.
It can be a lonely and heroic undertaking, as the source puts it, especially in a world that can often feel cynical or reward conformity. It really comes down to a choice. Do you prioritize your own judgment and honesty, even if it's uncomfortable? Or do you sacrifice your integrity for the temporary comfort of approval or belonging?
That's a powerful choice. Okay, so we've covered the 6 pillars that we generate from within. But we can't really ignore the external context, can we? Especially our upbringing.
No, absolutely not. While the pillars themselves are internal practices, the external environment, particularly during our formative years, profoundly influences how easily or naturally we adopt these practices. Understanding this is vital, especially for parents, but also for managers or anyone in a leadership role.
So let's talk parenting first. How is high self-esteem nurtured in childhood?
One of the most critical factors is that the child receives love and acceptance that is not conditional on performance or meeting specific expectations.
Unconditional positive regard.
Essentially, yes. If a child consistently gets subtle or not so subtle messages like, "You'll only be good enough if you fulfill our dreams for you," or "You're only okay if you meet our social standards or get top grades,"
then the underlying message is, you, as you are right now, are not enough.
Precisely. And that directly subverts the foundation of self-acceptance and self-respect right from the start.
There's also this key concept the source mentions, Psychological visibility.
Yes. Psychological visibility. This is crucial. A child feels seen and understood, which is essential for developing self-acceptance, when the parent's emotional response is congruent with the child's own internal reality.
Okay, an example.
If the child expresses sadness or frustration, and the parent responds with empathy, with understanding, even if they need to correct the behavior later, the child feels seen. Their internal state is acknowledged and validated.
But what if the child expresses, say, excitement or joy, and the parent, maybe because they're stressed or preoccupied, responds with impatience, like, oh, don't be silly, calm down, be quiet.
Then the child feels invisible. Or worse, they feel that their natural, spontaneous feeling is wrong or unacceptable. The parent, in that moment, is modeling a rejection of the child's internal reality. Living consciously as a parent means striving to see and understand the child's inner world, even if you don't approve of the specific behavior expressing it.
Makes sense. And what about praise? We often think praise builds self-esteem, but the source says it can be tricky.
Very tricky. It introduces the paradox of praise. Inappropriate praise, like gushing over a child for an achievement that actually required zero effort or was pure luck, can be just as harmful as inappropriate criticism.
Why? How can too much praise be bad?
Because it teaches the child one of two things. Either that you, the parent, are completely out of touch with reality, or that you're perhaps afraid to tell the truth, maybe insincere. Either way, it can subtly impair their trust in your judgment and ultimately their own ability to accurately assess their competence, their self-efficacy.
So how should parents reinforce positive behavior or effort then, if empty praise is out?
Instead of trying to manufacture self-esteem with compliments like, wow, you're the most amazing artist ever, after a quick scribble, the effective approach is to catch a child doing something right and simply describe the behavior and the effort or outcome.
Just describe it.
Yeah. You trust the child to draw their own appropriate conclusion about their competence. So instead of, you're a genius, you might say, I saw how you kept working on that puzzle even when it got tricky and you figured it out. Or, you shared your toy with your friend even though you really wanted to keep playing with it. That was kind. You describe the action, the effort, the positive consequence.
You reflect reality back to them accurately?
Exactly. You let them feel the pride and the sense of efficacy that comes from their own actions.
Okay, and these same principles, visibility, acceptance, reality-based feedback, they apply in the workplace too.
Seamlessly. The source argues quite forcefully that the policies and behaviors that support employee self-esteem are, not coincidentally, the very same policies that tend to make companies more productive and profitable in the long run.
Because you can't get people's best work if you crush their spirit.
Pretty much. You can't expect people to bring their best thinking, their initiative, their willingness to learn and adapt if you treat them disrespectfully, dismissively, or keep them in the dark.
So for managers listening, what are the key takeaways for creating a high self-esteem organization?
Well, first and foremost, managers have to model the practices themselves. You have to operate consciously, act with integrity, be willing to admit mistakes. That sets the tone.
Lead by example.
Definitely. And then basic active listening skills are huge. Making eye contact, giving people your full attention when they speak, providing clear, specific, reality-based feedback, both positive and corrective, being assertive when needed, but not aggressive or blaming.
What about when things go wrong? Dealing with mistakes or poor performance?
The key is to describe the undesirable behavior or outcome without attacking the person's character, instead of saying you're lazy and unreliable because you missed the deadline.
Which just puts them on the defensive.
Right, you say something like, the report was due Friday at 5 and it arrived Monday morning. This delay impacted Project X in these specific ways. What happened and what can we do to ensure this doesn't happen next time?
So you focus on the facts, the impact, and the solution. It allows the person to take responsibility without feeling personally condemned.
Exactly. It preserves their dignity while addressing the issue. And perhaps one of the most powerful things managers can do is to deliberately stretch people. Give them assignments that are slightly beyond their current known capabilities.
Why? To build efficacy?
Precisely. It shows you trust their potential to learn and grow. And critically, you have to frame errors and mistakes not as disasters or proof of incompetence, but as inevitable parts of learning and opportunities for growth.
So the key question becomes,
The key question when a mistake happens should always be something like, okay, what can we learn from this? Or what can you learn from what happened? That approach fosters self-esteem because it anchors competence not in never failing, but in the demonstrated capacity to think, to persevere, and to learn from reality.
Okay, this has been incredibly rich. A really deep dive into the psychological bedrock of what makes for truly unbreakable confidence. Let's try to recap those 6 pillars quickly.
Yeah.
And the key is they're not traits you're born with, right? They're skills, practices.
Learned skills, absolutely. Mutually reinforcing practices. So we have the internal ones. Consciousness, that commitment to being aware, to thinking. Self-acceptance, the reality-based, non-judgmental embrace of your thoughts, feelings, actions. And self-responsibility, owning your life, realizing no one is coming.
Those are the foundations within. And then the action practices that bring it into the world. Self-assertiveness, honoring and expressing your authentic self, your needs, your values, living purposefully, actively working towards chosen, defined goals. And personal integrity, that congruence, walking your talk.
And the real power comes from their synergy, how they weave together. The more you practice living consciously, for instance, the more natural and necessary it feels to live with integrity. The more you practice self-responsibility, the less tolerable feelings of dependency or helplessness become.
They build on each other, creating this upward spiral towards higher self-esteem and stronger, more resilient confidence.
Yeah.
But, practicing all 6, it takes effort, it takes will, perseverance. And as we've touched on, it often takes real courage, especially the courage to face discomfort, to look at painful truths, to maybe risk disapproval. Where does that energy, that commitment come from?
That's the final crucial piece. The source suggests that underlying all 6 pillars, fueling the commitment required to practice them, is something even more fundamental.
Which is?
We might call the 7th pillar, or maybe the engine driving the other 6. The fundamental love we have for our own life.
Love for our own life.
Yes. That deep instinctual valuing of our own being, our potential, our existence, this love, this drive to live and flourish, is presented as the ultimate motive power. It's the beginning of all virtue, the launching pad for our highest aspirations. It's what ultimately makes the struggle involved in consciousness, integrity, responsibility, and assertiveness feel worthwhile.
Because you value the life you're trying to live well.
Precisely. You're doing it out of respect and care for yourself and your potential.
Okay. So as we wrap up this deep dive, and you, the listener, reflect on this journey towards unbreakable confidence, maybe here's a final provocative thought to chew on.
Building on that last point, if the love for your own life is the deep fuel that drives the practice of these 6 pillars, ask yourself this. What part of your current comfort zone, maybe a small familiar habit of evasion or denial or people-pleasing, are you currently sacrificing your self-regard, your integrity, your potential in order to protect?
What comfort are you choosing over your own growth and dignity?
Yeah. And then the follow-up question is, what is the single smallest conscious act you could choose to take today or tomorrow to begin reclaiming that power, to choose that spiritual growth, that self-esteem, over the avoidance of maybe just a little bit of temporary discomfort?
That's the core choice, isn't it? Discomfort versus growth. Avoidance versus self-esteem.
It's the choice we all face, in big ways and small ways, every single day.
Thank you for diving deep with us on this really powerful stuff.
My pleasure. It's fundamental.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.